Welcome back to Orange Hat Reviews, everyone. Hope you're all having a wonderful day. So, last week was the end of the Kenobi series' first season. Apparently, it's a season 1 finale. And in this, or over the weeks, as the episodes aired, I had my friend Nerd with a Cigar, Kate, and my friend Adela Finn, Aaron, come on, and we discussed our issues with the Kenobi series, because it is a blatant insult to George Lucas's original trilogy and prequel trilogies. And as a passionate Star Wars fan, I think that it is our right to express our grievances against Lucasfilm for their apparent inability to understand what Star Wars means to us, what it means to all of us fans, and not just the ones that they wanted to pander to, and not them themselves who just want to make money. Star Wars is a very important culture, folks. It literally changed the way people looked at movies. George Lucas tried to expand and improve upon his original trilogy back in 1997, so that, and also used the special edition as a kickoff point, a testing area, if you will, for the prequels. And then the prequel trilogy came out, and we had more lore to go off of. We also had the EU, the books, the many books, hundreds of them, and the comics throughout, to expand upon the lore, in which Disney has since then discarded and eventually would claim to never have existed, only to go back and cherry pick it. And then they started creating their Disney Plus series, Book of Boba Fett, The Mandalorian, Visions, and now Kenobi. And before I get any further, I do want to say hello to the chat. Hello to David Kotler, good to see you. Jedi Padawan Trela, good to see you. And in this stream, I am going to go over the laundry list. 90 plus problems with the Kenobi series. And I will be shouting out those who had contributed to adding to this list as I go through the list. And I will give credit to where credit is due. I am a person that prides myself on integrity. I do not want to step on anybody's toes, whether they are a big channel or a small channel. I believe in giving credit where credit is due, because I am one who prides myself on also being humble. I will not take credit for the knowledge of others. However, I will, with their permission, use that knowledge. Now, without further ado, let's get into some of these problems, starting from the first episode. I literally went as much in order as I could for these problems. The story, for most people, they love to claim it's amazing. It expands the lore richly. But if you do pay attention, each one of their points can be countered. Starting with number 1, tracking fobs. Everybody remembers The Mandalorian. And everybody remembers the tracking fobs that they had, where they could track down people. Well, where are they in the show? It's been 10 years since Return or Revenge of the Sith, and, well, we don't exactly know when tracking fobs were established, and they ended up being a bane of Lucasfilm. Junebug. So if that is a laundry list, did you separate your darks and whites? Good to see you, Junebug. Now, we do see that in 10 years have passed since Revenge of the Sith. And this is from OG Star Wars. If Kenobi knows of the Inquisitors, he would therefore know about Vader's survival as he is their overseer. This is 10 years of the Empire. The Empire is in pretty good upswing. And Vader would most likely be known throughout the galaxy as the Emperor's enforcer. Are you telling me that even in isolation where the HoloNet is still available on Tatooine, that Obi-Wan would not have known that Darth Vader, who he does know as Anakin Skywalker, who he knows is also Darth Vader from Episode 3, he knows that Vader is Anakin and Anakin is Vader. If you go back and watch the scene where Obi-Wan recalibrates the code, and then he finds, or he goes into the security holograms. If into the security holograms you go, only pain will you find. And Obi-Wan must know the truth. Well, then he sees the hologram of Emperor Palpatine and Anakin kneeling. You have done well, my new apprentice. Now, Lord Vader, go and bring peace to our empire. And then Yoda also tells him, consumed by the dark side, or twisted by the dark side, young Skywalker has become. The boy you trained, gone he is, consumed by Darth Vader. That's twice that he has been told that Anakin is Darth Vader by two separate people. So Obi-Wan in this series, finding out that Anakin is Darth Vader and somehow being shocked that he's still alive, it doesn't make sense. It really doesn't. What do you and OG Star Wars think of the Kenobi Star Wars novel author saying that it fits in between the show and the book? Do you think he's a sellout? I honestly have not read the Kenobi novel yet, and I don't know anything about the author. So I can't really comment to that, CJH. So that is one thing. Number 3, tracking Fobs was number 1. Kenobi seems to have stopped using the Force, where he should have spent the last 10 years deepening his connection to it and learning how to communicate with Qui-Gon Jin. This was something that I also knew was a problem. I wonder if it's because he doesn't accept that Anakin is Darth Vader, and which something is something he accepts at the end of the show. We'll get into that. Now, remember, Obi-Wan took Anakin, or was going to take Anakin to Tatooine. And before he left to do so, Yoda stopped him. Training I have for you in your solitude on Tatooine. How to commune with Obi-Wan, or how to commune with your old master, I will teach you. He will teach him. And you would think that Obi-Wan would be steadfast in learning how to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn. How he learned from Qui-Gon. In Episode 3, the novel speaks, or has Qui-Gon Jinn speaking to Yoda. And even in Disney canon of the lost episodes of the Clone Wars, Season 6 they call it, Qui-Gon Jinn speaks to Yoda and also tells him he cannot take physical shape. His training was incomplete. So yes, when you hear that he has essentially closed himself off from the Force, stopped using it altogether for 10 years, that doesn't make sense. Obi-Wan went to Tatooine with two purposes: to ensure, or to learn to communicate with Qui-Gon Jinn, and to watch over Luke Skywalker, knowing that one day he would be ready to be trained, not when he was a child, because Yoda said to Obi-Wan, I will train him as Anakin should have been trained from an early age. No! We will let the Force decide when it is time for the children to be trained. We've made mistakes. We cannot make those mistakes again. They are the future of the Jedi Order. Now, So, yeah. Why wasn't he, or you're telling me that in the 10 years, he has not communicated once with Qui-Gon Jinn? It doesn't make sense, folks. It really doesn't. This is bad storytelling. This is very bad storytelling. And also, we have confirmed reports that one of the writers didn't even know that Anakin was Darth Vader. That is another major problem with this show, where you have writers who don't even know the source material that goes into this show. How is that not considered incompetence? I'm sorry, folks, but this is extremely disturbing when you have writers who don't even know the lore that they are supposed to be continuing. That is something that people should think about. To be a Star Wars fan is to enjoy this stuff and not seek to change it simply because you want it to represent something that it was never meant to represent. It was only meant to be a Star Wars or a science fiction soap opera that was, or that had established rules that you used from the original trilogy. You picked up from those rules in the original trilogy or the prequel trilogy. You also had those rules to set up. Both meshed well together. But because the people at Lucasfilm not knowing what they were doing, we get this thing that they called Obi-Wan Kenobi. Addressing the chat. If the show had it that he was suffering so much that he couldn't see or hear Qui-Gon, or at the end of the show, he finally accepted that Anakin died and Darth Vader confused him or consumed him. Except that he already knew that that was the case in episode 3. He already knew that. He already knew that Anakin had turned. If you read the books, which are still considered canon, he let go of his attachment to Anakin. He let go of that attachment because he realized it was no longer Anakin. It was Darth Vader. He went to Mustafar for one purpose: to kill Darth Vader, to destroy the Sith. And he did what he had to. He did make that choice. He did accept that Anakin was gone. He knew that Anakin was gone. He felt it when Anakin was trying to kill him. He understood that Padme still believed to her dying breath that there was still good in him. Maybe there was. But Anakin was buried at that time because he was too consumed with hatred. Continuing on with the list, I'm not going to address the chat too much, folks. I do have to get this stream going. Bail Organa contacting Obi-Wan Kenobi. Bail, throughout the years, was a known sympathizer to the Jedi during the Clone Wars. The Emperor Palpatine knew of this. It was also in the record, or in security records and security intelligence, that Bail went to the Jedi Temple during Operation Nightfall in the movie Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. He reacted to the death of a Jedi by screaming out, "No!" Now, of course, there is the difference in the canon where in the novel, the 501st said, "No witnesses, kill him." And then there's the movie where they said, "Don't worry about him, let him go. He's not our target." The Jedi were the targets. But that still is something that Palpatine would want to acknowledge, he would also want to keep an eye on Bail Organa. He would have spies watching him. He would tap his communications. Any communications between Obi-Wan or between Bail and anyone would be monitored by Imperial intelligence. Even 10 years later, because they know he's a sympathizer still, he would always be under suspicion. No matter how much he told Yoda, I will be showing support for the Empire, but know that I will always have faith in the Jedi and the Republic. That was from the novel. Even though he does support the Empire, he also undermines them. And yet, the Emperor would be watching him because of that. So they know he's a sympathizer. And he somehow has a direct line to a holo projector for Obi-Wan Kenobi. That little device that contacted Obi-Wan in the cave is not a communicator. That is another mistake made by the show, by the people who are in charge of the show. That's a holo projector. That's not a communicator. And if you really need the proof, well, pardon the shake of the camera, I got the proof right here. Let's see here. Right here. See? Holo projector. Has to be paired with the communicator for face-to-face transmission, folks. That is how it is. That is one of the things that they screwed up. They can't even get their technology right. Now, hold on. Putting the book back. And yet, they are, when Leia, who should never have been in the show, except for maybe a glimpse of her in at this time, because he is supposed to be watching Luke and protecting Luke. He should be protecting Luke. Nothing else. How you doing, GB Luke? Good to see you. Well, because Leia gets kidnapped, automatically Luke is discarded. Nobody gives a damn about Luke anymore. Not even Obi-Wan. He has to go and save Leia. Well, I'm sorry, folks. This doesn't flow right with the story. Everybody believed in Episode 4, A New Hope, that Kenobi was dead. If Obi-Wan was sighted 10 years after Return or Revenge of the Sith, conversations with Tarkin and A New Hope wouldn't work. Surely he must be dead by now. Thinking he may have died of old age. Or thinking he may have died probably by the earlier days of the, or by the earlier times of the Empire. Surely he must be dead by now. He's been off the radar for 20 fucking years. 19 specifically. And I'm sorry for swearing. Oh, Owen Beru had it under control so much that they allowed a saber-wielding psychopath to get into their homestead. Now, folks, it doesn't make sense that Bail Organa would contact Kenobi. They all agreed that they would not contact each other in Revenge of the Sith. They knew that they couldn't contact each other for fear of the Empire's discovering the children. They needed to go absolute to ground. And then somehow Bail knows his exact location down to the cave on Tatooine. How does that happen? Technology at that time, when you're tracking communications, you could track the signal sparsely or to a planet or a planetary system, Not specifically. Look at what happened in episode 1 when the Naboo tried contacting Queen Amidala. They managed to know that it was on the planet, but they didn't know specifically where. Tatooine is sparsely populated. If the trace was correct, I will find them quickly, Master. They didn't know exactly where they were. So how does that work that Bail can somehow know exactly where Obi-Wan Kenobi is? Not to mention, he calls him Obi-Wan, directly contradicts a line in A New Hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan. Now that's a name I haven't heard in a long time. A long time. I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born, when he's talking to Luke. He stopped going. They didn't even call him Obi-Wan after the twins were born in that movie. He called him Master Kenobi. That's how specific they were. That is how specific they were in that film. I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born. And they respected that in episode 3. Master Kenobi. So yeah. Now, that also does raise the issue in The Rise of Darth Vader, where Qui-Gon Jin, when he contacts him, he does call him Obi-Wan. So there is that small contradiction as well, and I will admit that flaw. Still, that book is a lot better than this trash. Now, number 5. Well, I just covered number 5. Because I haven't gone by the name of Obi-Wan since before you were born. Now, number 6. If Obi-Wan cut himself off from the Force, how is he expected to train Luke when the time is right? This is a major contradiction, and this comes from Matthew Kadish, the salty nerd. So yeah, he's essentially hasn't used the Force in 10 years. And then suddenly he's supposed to be ready at a moment's notice to train the boy? He barely saved the life of Leia on that planet Dayu, when he had to basically shit his pants just to catch Leia with the Force. How is he expected to train Luke if he is having such difficulty using the Force in the earlier parts of this show? Adam, what if the time had come at 10 when they were 10 years old that he would have to train the boy? He wouldn't be ready. He wouldn't be ready. So yes, there is that major contradiction. And I do thank you, Salty Nerd, Matthew Kadish, for providing that information. This is another thing from the Salty Nerd podcast from Matthew Kadish. The Jedi that searches out Kenobi. How is it that he spots him in town and finds him so easily when the Inquisitors have taken 10 years to find him? This is part of story logic. By this Jedi somehow tracking down Kenobi and finding him in the middle of the desert. How? And also, Riva is considered a mind prober. She's very good at probing minds. If this was the case when she showed up later in the season or later in the episode and bullied Owen, why didn't she read his mind? She would have picked up on faint whispers of the Force that he was hiding something. She's known to be a very powerful mind probe, like Kylo Ren. That is the problem with that technique. Having somebody with that technique creates a whole big problem, because then why not just use it here and there willy-nilly, finding out things that would screw up the lore even further? Just saying, folks. And thank you to Matthew Kadish for this again. The Jedi that searched out Kenobi saw him, talked with him. Riva is known to be a powerful mind probe. Again, this is part of it. You're telling me that when they caught up to this Jedi, that they didn't interrogate him? That was their intention, to find and interrogate that Jedi. And yet, they didn't interrogate him and find out that Kenobi was in the middle of the desert somewhere. She would have also sensed Owen lying, would have found out that Luke was on that moisture farm, completely destroyed the lore. But, doesn't make sense. And yes, again, killing the Jedi without interrogating, that is also part of Matt Kadish. Matt Kadish has provided a list of some of the stuff, and I do thank him for allowing me to use some of his points for this. So, the problem with the lightsabers being buried, sand shifts over time. If he cut himself off from the Force or is not using the Force, how is he able to find his lightsaber? There is no explanation as to how he knows where they are. So how is he able to find it? Now, this next problem, folks, is a doozy. A lot of people have given me guff. A lot of people have said that's not what it means. However, this show in its full entirety supports this point. The one line that completely screwed this show completely up was Riva talking to one of the bounty hunters that she hired to kidnap Leia. He fought alongside her father in the Clone Wars. Now, everybody and their mother can say, oh, she was talking about Bail Organa. How? You see, folks, Bail Organa didn't fight in the Clone Wars. Not once. That's actually a thing that even Filoni screwed up. Because he was responsible for the whole show of the Clone Wars. He never had an episode where Obi-Wan served at Bail's command. That he never helped Bail during the Clone Wars. That was one of the big screw-ups. And her specific wording was, he fought alongside her father in the Clone War, or in the war. Now, they're saying that this means Bail. She knows that Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader because somehow she lived when he stabbed her through the chest at the Jedi Temple. But how does she know that Leia is Anakin's daughter? How does she know this? It is never explained. It's something that she shouldn't have even known at all, because it is part of Imperial record that Padme died still pregnant and the babies died with her. Nobody knew that Leia was adopted. And this point comes from OG Star Wars. I'm going to read from a post she had. It is from the novel of Return of the Jedi. And Disney has said the novels to the movies are still considered canon. Ben kept his voice even so that the sounds could give solace when the words did not. The Organa family was highborn and politically quite powerful in that system. Leia became a princess by virtue of lineage. No one knew she'd been adopted, of course, but it was a title without real power, since Alderaan had been or long been a democracy. Even so, the family continued to be politically powerful, and Leia, following in her foster father's path, became a senator as well. That's not all she became, of course. She became the leader of her cell in the alliance against the corrupt empire. And because she had diplomatic immunity, she was a vital link for getting information to the rebel cause. That's what she was doing when her path crossed yours. For her foster parents had always told her to contact me on Tatooine if her troubles became desperate. So yes, when she contacts Obi-Wan on Tatooine in A New Hope, this is the first time she is contacting him. She doesn't call him Ben. She doesn't even call him Obi-Wan Kenobi until the last part of the message. Her first line, her first words in that holo message: General Kenobi, years ago you served my father in the Clone Wars, and now he seeks your help in our struggle against the Empire. I regret to inform you, or I regret that I cannot bring you to my father in person, but my ship has fallen under attack and my efforts to bring you to Alderaan has failed. So yeah, on and on and on. Hello, OG. Good to see you. I just covered your point from Twitter, the little Return of the Jedi bit from the novel, which is, again, considered canon by even Disney standard. So, this is our most desperate hour. That is the first time and only time she contacted Obi-Wan Kenobi. That doesn't make sense in this show now. It completely wipes out part of A New Hope's continuity. Now, folks, do not get me wrong. I have nothing against the actress who played young Leia in this show. She's a good actress. She played the role of 10-year-old Leia very well. Except that I have often said in my previous streams, she was cast in the wrong show. Make a Leia show. She would be perfect for it. But do not have her a part of this and interacting with Obi-Wan. It doesn't make sense. Because if this was the case, why is she so dispassionate about his death on the Death Star when Luke is torn up over Obi-Wan being dead? She barely registered any sort of sorrow. If she had had this interaction throughout the series with Obi-Wan and she saw him struggle or saw him killed, she would have had more of an emotional reaction because she had spent so long with Obi-Wan. It makes no sense. Obi-Wan's purpose was to watch Luke, not Leia. Just saying. Continuing on. And getting back to this. So yeah. Also, Vader. Because we all know how Vader is in the Clone Wars, or as Darth Vader, in their own... This is Vader in Disney continuity. From the comics. He wiped out an entire group of clones for hearing the name Anakin Skywalker and him referred to as Anakin Skywalker. He killed clones. And he also murdered Jocasta Nu when she called him Anakin Skywalker, so that nobody would know who he was. It is part of Imperial record that Anakin Skywalker died in the Jedi Temple along with the rest of the Jedi as a part of Operation Nightfall. He did not command the assault. He fell during the assault. That is part of Imperial record. You have the comics where a trooper accidentally sees Darth Vader's face. He literally uses the Force to snap that trooper's head clean 180 degrees. Anyone who's seen Vader's face or anyone who knows who he is dead. He wouldn't allow anyone to keep or to know that. And apparently, he knew all along that Riva was a youngling who survived. How and why he did not finish the job doesn't make sense. Hello, Eastland. Good to see you. Thank you for stopping in. So, yeah, there's that as well. The 501st Clone Trooper on Dayu looked directly at Kenobi in the series during the second episode. Looked at him right in the eye before he turned away quickly. You are telling me that a seasoned clone trooper, down on his luck as though he may be, would not have recognized the legendary Obi-Wan Kenobi? Judging by his blue striped armor, he was 501st. He would have known Kenobi. The 501st worked with Anakin and Kenobi. He would have recognized him, and because of that inhibitor chip from Disney continuity, he would have been compelled to continue to execute Order 66. He would have tried to kill Kenobi. It would have literally broke him out of a drunken haze, and it would have forced him to try to kill Kenobi. That is another example of poor writing and not paying attention to detail. It wasn't a bum trying to be a veteran. They literally had him as, or they actually had it as, or had Tamara Morrison playing that clone. Number 13, Obi-Wan using a blaster. I seem to remember a few lines from the movies and from the novel, which is still considered canon, of Revenge of the Sith. He mustered up the worst insult he could think of about that blaster. So uncivilized. Not as random or as clumsy as a blaster from A New Hope when he's talking to Luke about the lightsaber. An elegant weapon for a more civilized age. Not as random or as clumsy as a blaster. The way he says it is very dismissive of blasters. He hates them. And yet he uses them in the show. Odd. Doesn't make sense. Most people, especially Jedi like Obi-Wan Kenobi, could use the Force in subtle ways to divert people's attention away from him. If need be, he was a very skilled hand-to-hand combat veteran, as he was trained in the Jedi. This sort of stuff becomes second nature when you are as trained as long as you have been, like Obi-Wan was. 14. How does a 10-year-old not get caught by an adult when Leia is running through the marketplace? Obi-Wan literally lets her get away. How does he not get a hold of her? Now, a lot of people can simply argue the point, well, if he grabs her, then that would draw more attention. Yet, he is there to protect her and get her home. He can't afford to dolly. He could simply say to anybody who was like, hey, take your hands off that kid. This is my daughter. And then he can subtly nudge them with the Force for them to believe it. But because he's not using the Force, and because of how bad the writing is in the show, that wouldn't have been easy. So yeah, a 10-year-old can't even gives him a chase up onto rooftops, folks. And not only that, she's hopping rooftops and somehow staying against him while he's just trotting behind her. If his goal was to catch her, he would have caught her in like 3 or 4 bounds of his gate. So yeah, that doesn't make sense. 15. Why does it take Kenobi nearly shedding himself to catch Leia? He shouldn't be rusty when it comes to using the Force. He has been trained since childhood, and it has been his companion through many of his years. When a person is training and using the Force for their whole life, you do not forget that feeling. He even says it. Or he even describes what it's like to use the Force to Leia, which is also a mistake in my opinion. Leia's entire involvement in the show is a problem, folks. Her entire involvement in this show is a problem because it does break continuity with A New Hope. Haja Estri. How does his blaster not attract the Inquisitor and the Imperials nearby when he blasted the droid repeatedly? Not to mention, how does he know who Riva is and where she will be? This is from Matthew Kadish. That is a good point. That is a great point because he somehow is just there in front of Riva. You have found me. I am the Jedi you seek. She's so repulsed, but she's like, you're not a Jedi. It's bad writing. He's a good actor. The guy that played Haja Estri is a good actor. It's just he played a character that could have been used in such a better way in the show. They could have made him a sidekick for Obi-Wan. They didn't. And then he's suddenly wanted by the Empire afterward. Are you telling me that this fake Jedi, this nobody, is now suddenly a huge problem? Well, he did aid and abet a Jedi, so yes, he would be wanted. He would have a small bounty on his head. Maybe like 2,000 credits. Not to mention, how is Obi-Wan able to afford stuff with Imperial credits? What currency is he using and how did he get it? Just saying. Also, when he had just caught Leia, let her down, then he's coming right around the corner. How did he get down there so fast? This is all bad cutting, folks. Bad cinematography. That comes from Raging Rhino. How he somehow gets down there so fast. Huh. That's the problem, David Kotler. Obi-Wan Kenobi was considered a Jedi Master. Using the Force or not using it for 10 years would not have made him rusty. He would have just reached out instinctively and it would have come to his, or it would have helped assisted him. Obi-Wan Kenobi in the novel, Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, there's a reason why he's my favorite human Jedi of that era. It is because he had become so in touch with the Force. He had opened himself so completely to the Force in the novel that he took on General Grievous on the Invisible Hand and turned an impossible situation into something that literally scared Grievous for the first time in his life. A lot of people will say that the Clone Wars was, or that Kenobi had met Grievous several times. No. Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars is a much more accurate depiction of General Grievous and Obi-Wan Kenobi's relationship, which was lack thereof until Episode 3. The first time that Anakin Skywalker met Grievous was also the first time that Kenobi met Grievous. It is also laid out in the novel of Episode 3 if you read it. I now have an idea of how he fights, or rather how he runs. speaking from his first experience with Grievous on the Invisible Hand. That's just another problem with it. But I do digress. Getting back to other things. Number 17. If the Grand Inquisitor had learned of Riva having an Imperial Senator's daughter kidnapped, how does Palpatine not know this? And therefore, that creates another problem. Palpatine, the Emperor, would have heard that his Inquisitors had kidnapped an Imperial Senator's daughter. He would have looked into the situation. He would have known what was going on. Now, there is a chance he would have seen what could transpire, what would transpire here. There is a chance that he would let this play out. Indeed, there is. But he would know that if Kenobi was alive, scorched earth. If Vader knows that Kenobi is alive and Palpatine knows that Kenobi is alive, they would do everything and anything possible to kill him. They would bring the full might of the Empire down on Kenobi. Those lovely little fan posters of Kenobi that shows the 501st Legion bearing down on him with an Imperial Star Destroyer and he's standing alone. That is exactly what would happen if the Empire knew that Kenobi was alive. Because him and Yoda are the biggest threats to the Empire in Vader and the Emperor's mind. They cannot risk Kenobi and Yoda being alive. As long as they stayed hidden, they were fine. But the moment they revealed themselves, they would have had an entire legion of stormtroopers going up against them. They would be blasted from orbit with an orbital bombardment from a Star Destroyer. They would have turned Tatooine to a glass floor. That is how much they would not take chances with Kenobi being alive. It doesn't make sense, folks. And I got a mosquito in here. Lovely. So yeah. Also, number 18. The Grand Inquisitor is unmoving and unbreathing, or not breathing and unmoving, when Riva stabs him in one of his stomachs. You see him literally dead on the ground, and yet he can somehow perk back up later on in the show. Interesting. It seems that lightsabers have lost their efficacy once they became the product of Disney. It seems that lightsabers no longer have the ability to kill people. And that is evident throughout the show. Wickedly evident throughout the show. Lightsabers are so weak in this show. Oh my God, folks. It is painful to watch if you are as much of a fan as I am. Now, folks, when I do say I am a fan of Star Wars, I can't stress enough. I have watched it since I was 2 years old. Every year, multiple times a year, since I was 2 years old. And I have read the books, the novels. I have been a fan since, 2 years old. I remember my first memories of watching it. My emotions, the fear, the wonder, the excitement, the joy, all of it. I remember those feelings. And yet, this is what we got now. This crap, this drivel, this attempt at Star Wars. Continuing on. So, if he is alive later, the storytelling is just not that good, because the show has come out after Rebels. but is chronologically before Rebels, yet most in the current generation knows he is alive. There's no stakes or it's going to be very easy to realize that he is not dead. Doesn't make any sense to even try this. Now, if Vader can probe Riva so easily in the third episode, he's like, I know what you seek. Or I've been watching you, third sister. I know what you seek. So yes, he would know that she knows he is Anakin Skywalker. He wouldn't allow her to live. This is revisiting that problem again. She knows too much. He also knows that she seeks to kill him. Why is he allowing her to live? What, so she could play this game? No. He would have snuffed her. That is who Vader is. He would have killed her. He slaughtered clones if they even so much as heard his name be called Anakin Skywalker. He killed Jedi to make sure, or who knew who he was. He wouldn't take that risk. Also, how does she know Anakin Skywalker is Darth Vader? Now, folks, I am going to jump ahead a little bit to explain this, but first, let me just grab a drink here. They don't even show during the Order 66 scenes where she has been stabbed by him. She played dead. That's another problem, by the way. There was no scene where the clones referred to him as Lord Vader. So how does she know he is Darth Vader? They don't have the connection. They don't have the specific detail that is needed in this kind of storytelling to express that she is, or that she indeed knows who he is. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. Now, if they would have had her hear him or one of the clones say, Lord Vader, we've spotted another Jedi coming this way, or something like that, there you go. That would have made this objectively a little bit better. However, a child surviving a lightsaber through this area on, well, here, let me lower this. Right here, just below the sternum and downward, cleaving out the spine. She played dead, and somehow she thought that playing dead against somebody who would be able to sense whether or not this child was alive, it just doesn't work. I sense something, a presence I have not felt since, well, okay. We know he can sense, that they could sense presences across freaking galaxies and whatnot. And yet, they can't, or he's fooled that she lived? It doesn't make sense, folks. This really doesn't make sense. And I'm almost an hour into this, and we're only into the 19th or the 20th problem. So I'm going to have to get it going. Kenobi constantly snapping at Leia as a child would no doubt make her apprehensive to seek him out 9 years later, as she would remember this kind of cruelty. I mean, yes, they do become friends at the end. Dang, mosquito. And yes, they are essentially caring for each other, which is kind of creepy the way that they expressed it in the show. However, her being snapped at would kind of affect it a little bit. I mean, it's like, people are not always that good, Leia. Leia, stop talking. Nag, 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 nag. That's just not good storytelling. Not good acting either on Ewan's part. How did the stormtroopers not recognize Kenobi in the back of that Mole Man Freck's speeder? This is somebody who's had a bounty on him since the inception of the Empire, since the creation of the Empire. His face is plastered all over the core worlds and in the Imperial Hollow net, and also in the Hollow records as a traitor. This comes from Mark with a C. Shout out to the Gospel according to Mark with a C for this detail. How do these stormtroopers not have that data? They would have recognized Kenobi. They would have tried to kill Kenobi. Number 22. Why does Kenobi surrender to 3 stormtroopers after wiping out 5 and one ugly, angry mole man? Why does he suddenly surrender to 3 of them when he just took out 5 and a probe droid? Doesn't really make sense there, folks. That's just bad storytelling. The battle between Vader and Kenobi. Not only does this break canon, especially this first battle, Kenobi is so afraid that he is a coward. How he loses to Vader, and the choreography of this entire fight. Bang, bang, bang. It's like trying to smack him with a cane. Come on. And asking him, what have you become? As unnecessary as Kenobi already knows what he has become. He knew what he became in episode 3. He knew that Anakin was beyond saving, which is why he did what he did. Sliced him up like a frickin' sausage or a kielbasa. So yeah, that was 23. 24. Order 66 doesn't seem to be that effective, as there is literally a movement called the Path that hides Jedi and moves them around. Why didn't the Jedi also join the rebellion? It makes one think, folks. It makes one think. We're only in the 3rd episode of this stuff right now. There is a dedicated movement moving Jedi survivors 10 years after the formation of the Empire. They really made a mistake making this 10 years later. They should have made it like 3 years later or something. Because otherwise, because it would have made a lot more sense. The kids wouldn't have been involved. And there could have been a whole nother bunch of stuff going on. Would have been a radical improvement. Just saying. Next one. If Leia was in Imperial, hold on. So far, this show has shown Kenobi giving into his attachments, what he has learned to let go of at the end of Revenge of the Sith. This is from OG Star Wars. Yes, he is scared of Anakin. He knows that this is Anakin killing people. Leia, he is attached to her. He has to be stoic when it comes to these things. He can't give in to attachment because he knows what attachment does. He has seen what it did to Anakin. He wouldn't give in to his attachments if he already knew what would happen if he did, which is the case. But this show does not convey that. This show shows him giving in willy-nilly to all of his different attachments, especially that Tala girl or woman. How broken up he was about her dying later. Next one. If Leia was in Imperial custody, the database would have been updated, showing that she is a Jedi sympathizer. Her father would immediately be called into question, and his loyalties questioned. He would have been arrested and then killed by the Empire. And Vader and the Emperor would have been notified that an Imperial senator's child would have been taken. Yeah. Why would they let Bail Organa live for another 9 years? Why would they let him live for another 9 years if his 10-year-old daughter was interrogated and apprehended under suspicion of being a Jedi sympathizer? This does not make any sense. But they did it anyway. It's a major lore break. It doesn't make any sense when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Kenobi struggling to use the Force is still current in Episode 4 early on, yet he can hold back an ocean trying to get in through a broken window later in the show or in the episode. This is bad storytelling, folks. He was struggling to pull something, a small object to him, yet later he is able to hold back an ocean with one hand and the Force. It doesn't work, folks. This is some of the worst storytelling I have seen. Tala threatens the security in the Fortress Inquisitorius with getting the Grand Inquisitor. Surely the news of the Grand Inquisitor being dead, or rumored to be dead because he's not seen until later on in the show, surely rumors would have spread, reports even, of his supposed death. This would have tipped off the security. But they still let her pass. That's bad writing. Tala takes out everyone in that security bunker in the fortress, or just that one guy, and then there are other people. How would they not have heard the scuffle? Also, Kenobi talking through the communicator several times. There were people over there, like one chair over. They didn't hear him? How is that possible, folks? Please tell me how this is possible. Somebody would have heard and reported it. From Raging Rhino, Leia resisting Riva. She would realize that this child is Force sensitive. Yep. Thus, they would tell Lord Vader. Thus, Leia would be forced to be an Inquisitor. Now, one could argue that she's just very strong-willed, but no, not as a kid. They would have picked up that she is Force sensitive, especially from another Force user. Now, a lot of people would probably ask, why didn't Vader pick up that Leia was Force sensitive on the Death Star? Darth Vader didn't probe her with the Force. They used a mind probe, a machine, to try to do it. And she resisted it as well. Tala says Kenobi is on Florum, but the alarm goes off, and they say, it's him. Yet, the Inquisitor didn't cut down Kenobi, or didn't cut her down. The second she realized she was lying. It's like, really? Really? Come on now. How does no one notice Kenobi clearly hiding something under the coat? Folks, this was very bad. He looked like it just didn't look right. You had troopers even looking at him, yet they didn't see this as suspicious? How he was hiding her? Now, a lot of these stands for and shills for the Kenobi series. Oh my God, you guys are so yuck by talking about this. This is a major problem. How nobody notices this when they're surrounded by Imperials. I'm sorry, folks. That is a major problem. Number 34. Empire Strikes Back. Snow speeders. Them using a speeder that carries only 2 people. 2 people, folks. Lucky I got this. So let's dive into it, shall we? The problem with them using the snow speeders from Empire Strikes Back. Let's see. Yeah. Nope. Nope, that's Y-Wing. Ties. Give me a second and I'll get to it, folks, because this is important. The snow speeder. See right here, folks? See right there? 2 people can only fit in this thing. 2 of them. Not only that, the person facing the back of the snowspeeder is the gunner. The gunner is the one that goes pew, pew, pew with the snowspeeders. Yet these speeders have the pilot who is focusing on maneuvers and whatnot, and yet they're going pew, pew, pew. Doesn't work. You have 3 people getting into one speeder, and you have, and it's only meant for 2 people, so that's 4 people. It doesn't work. The mechanics aren't there. It just doesn't work. Also, from Raging Rhino, the shot where it shows the speeders going into the hangar, they had to cut, because if they didn't cut, they would have showed the speeders crashing into the freaking walls. These things are highly maneuverable, yes, but they still would have crashed in the damn walls. It doesn't make sense. Lola being the tracker that Riva told Vader about, yet we don't see her, or we don't see Leia get Lola back. We do not see Lola being given back to her, because obviously Riva was about to torture Leia. Now, here's another thing, folks. Riva about to torture Leia? That's another problem. You see, because this is a character that has a redemption arc. Somebody who is about to torture a 10-year-old girl should not get a redemption arc as fast as they have in this show. That is extremely bad writing, extremely bad acting, and it just shows that the people involved don't know what they're doing. Kenobi and Vader crossing path 9 years before A New Hope diminishes the conversation between Tarkin and Vader. Surely he must be dead by now. The Jedi are extinct. Their fire has gone out of the universe. You, my friend, are all that's left of their religion. Even Moff Tarkin believes that Kenobi is dead by that time. But he believes him to be long dead. But didn't you find him like 10 or 9 years ago? I mean, yet we couldn't find him? That doesn't make sense. It really does diminish the effect of that conversation in A New Hope. How is Leia allowed to be an Imperial senator when she was a known Jedi sympathizer? It's on Imperial record. She was accused of being a Jedi sympathizer and that she was apprehended at 10 years old. How was she allowed to be an Imperial senator 6 years later? That doesn't make sense, folks. That doesn't make sense. There's no way you can spin it. There isn't. There is no way you can spin that. It's just bad writing. First shot of Anakin as a Padawan in the flashback. Doesn't look like he's been de-aged. You can tell he looks at least 20 years older. This training battle intercut throughout the story shows, and this is when I asked, was this the rematch of the century? No. But the de-aging, apparently, when a YouTuber can do a deepfake better than the de-aging of Lucasfilm Limited, that tells you right now that that is just bad. When YouTubers are more passionate about Star Wars than the people in charge of making Star Wars, Why is Lucasfilm even trying at this point? A person with equipment for de-aging and whatnot and digital artwork did a better job than a multi-billion-dollar company with a billion-dollar costs for the show. Budget. That's the word I was looking for. So yeah. Next one. This comes from Mark with a C. So why did the huge mass of people wait for Kenobi to arrive when there were 2 transports? That's a good question. We all know that there were 2 transports, so didn't everybody at the path on Jabim? Why didn't they just take that second one and get the heck out of there? Long before the Empire arrived. That doesn't make sense, folks. So good on Mark with a C for catching that. Lola is being used to track and is being remote controlled by someone. Riva? We don't know who. Lola's betrayal and tracking is because of a restraining bolt. The sabotage I get, but not the tracking. Where's the tracking part of it? Restraining bolts don't have tracking. You can't track a restraining bolt. Restraining bolts are only meant for that purpose, to restrain them from being or having too much free will. So please explain, where was the tracking? Because as soon as she takes off the restraining bolt, Lola returns to normal. Come on now. Why are so many lightsabers there? This is never explained. Were they discarded, or do they belong to dead Jedi? I mean, folks, that is another thing. It's like, you could have had somebody say, we've had a lot of Jedi move in. These are the ones that didn't make it. But even then, if a Jedi fought an Inquisitor or was killed, they would have, or their lightsaber would have been taken to be destroyed. Yeah, it's a small thing, but it still does contribute to the greater lore. Also, I do got to go backward in the scene of Kenobi and his lightsaber bouncing off a stormtrooper's armor when he is swinging and smacking that stormtrooper 2 or 3 or 4 times, and that trooper isn't in pieces. What the hell? He should have been in pieces, folks. And boom, comes off like that. It doesn't make sense. They weakened lightsabers in this show. Again. How is Leia mechanically adept all of a sudden? This isn't explained at all that she is mechanically savvy. We see her identifying ships, sure. But it's never established that she knows how to handle mechanical things at all anywhere in the show. Now, a lot of people can say, well, Anakin knew how to handle things when he was 9. He was a freaking slave when he was very young. He probably learned this stuff. She is living in a cushy lifestyle on Alderaan. It wouldn't allow her to be a grease monkey. I'm sorry, folks. That doesn't make sense. So suddenly she knows how to do mechanical things. Obi-Wan had to fix Lola when Lola got smacked down. Yeah. But suddenly, why didn't Leia just fix her? She's mechanically adept. Why didn't Leia just fix her? You know? These are small problems that just continue to build up. Message from Bail that he will check on the boy if he does not hear back from him. So does he want the Empire to know about Luke? I mean, seriously. How does he know Owen's name? Why would Owen need help with the boy? Folks, he did this to an open frequency, to Kenobi. And yet, he also never showed up. Thank you to Mark with a C for pointing that out. He never showed up. So it's like, yeah, dude, you're a liar. Kenobi, yeah, the communicator and whatnot. I already covered that. When did Obi-Wan learn of the designation of Order 66? There's another good question. When did he ever learn that designation of the code to kill Jedi was known as Order 66? That's something that was never explained, folks. That's something that was never explained. So a heavy gun couldn't breach this door, but Riva's lightsaber could. Why didn't she just do that to begin with? When they're trying to blast their way into the base, and she just takes her lightsaber and sweeps down a little bit, and then uses the force to open the door. Why didn't she just do that to begin with? Why? Folks, this is a problem. The logic in this show showed so much stupidity that it's hard to believe that anybody smart made this show. I'm just saying, these are problems, objective, standard problems. And yet nobody wants to chime in on them except for the people who have that I have seen. Like Stig, Obi-Wan, or Stig, OG, Raging Rhino, Tuscan Bob, Open Airlock Policy, and Matthew Kadish, and others have given their thoughts. Why does Luke not, or Lucasfilm, not Luke, why does Lucasfilm not even, or they ignore us all the time? Yet we are the ones that are literally trying to help them. It's like, maybe if you listened to us, you would have actually had a product worth investing in. But they never listened to us. Alan Burrows 04, good to see you. From my point of view, the Disney are evil. Nice. Riva's backstory being explained of how she was one of the younglings and somehow survived Anakin's raid on the temple, stabs her, and unlike the Grand Inquisitor, she doesn't have two stomachs. Not to mention the 501st would have shot the bodies of or shot the bodies to ensure death. I mean, look at what they did to Ki-Adi-Mundi. They didn't just stop after he fell. They blasted him even more. They didn't stop after Aayla Secura dropped dead. They blasted her to ribbons. They ensured that there was no possible way that any of these Jedi could survive. Not even the kids. They would have blasted those kids to ribbons. They would have shot them a couple times to ensure that they were dead. Or they would have checked their pulses like they did with Zet Jacasa when he was killed on the landing platform that Bail Organa witnessed. So yeah, this is terrible writing. OG Star Wars also brought up playing dead for somebody who can sense whether or not you're alive doesn't make sense. She joined the Inquisitors to get vengeance on Vader, but this still doesn't explain how she knows the name Vader, which I already covered earlier. Not to mention that if Vader sensed her vengeful motives, he would have just killed her, especially if he recognized her as a youngling survivor of Order 66. There's just so much wrong with that writing, folks. Riva asks Obi-Wan where he was when Anakin was slaughtering her friends and her. He could have just answered her. I was on Utapau being hunted by the clones there. I was away being attacked by other clones. Roken has a Wookiee bowcaster blaster, and he doesn't react from the recoil of the blaster, folks. These things are meant to give a kick when they fire by anybody who is not a Wookiee. Stormtrooper accuracy is seriously worse than the OT. How is that possible? You have point blank in the scene in episode 5 of this stuff, and yet only three of these path rebels are killed by stormtroopers. Tala, one other guy, and two other people. Yikes. Leia looking for the red breaker, taking that long and suddenly finding it for a plot purpose, it doesn't really work very much, in my opinion. Thermal detonator inside of a tunnel. Nice touch, but even Riva was between it and the troopers behind her. It would have gotten, or she would have gotten burned at the least, cooked alive at the most likely cooked alive. That thermal detonator with the red button on top, that's an indicator that that is a Class A thermal detonator. Military grade. Stronger than most others, with a blast radius of 60 meters. And you're telling me that that Tala sets off this Class A thermal detonator, and Riva's alive because she's within 20, or she's at least within 10 meters of that damn thing. You're telling me that she wasn't cooked alive after that sucker went off? There's a blast door right there behind her, and yet that would have sent most of the blast towards Riva and the Imperials. Not to mention, Tala, the one who set it off, would have been atomized. Yet her holster survives for the next episode. The small slip up with the communicator's rubber receiver coil. Yeah, that was bad. Because when it comes to props, folks, a little bit of movie trivia for you. When it comes to certain props, they usually create a hero one, a stunt one for like the hero to use and whatnot, and then the stunt one for if it gets like dropped or jostled. They didn't seem to be paying attention to which one they should have used in that scene, because when he hands it to Haja Estri, you see that dang coil like that with it. No joke. It's like that thing isn't supposed to be rubber. So yikes. Small, but still a problem. Now there's this other line by Kenobi. There are other ways to fight. Folks, this would have been a much better scene or a much better dialogue if they had changed it to there are alternatives to fighting. Yeah. It would have been a good call back to A New Hope, and fans would have been like, nice. But no, there are other ways to fight. You got to engage with your fans by giving us some nicer or more and quite obvious Easter eggs, you know? Obi-Wan pleading to Riva's trauma. If it was that easy, she would never have tortured Leia. She wouldn't have. Also, how did none of the troopers that were standing right near them, right next to them, in fact, not hear them talking to each other? Their whispers were not whispers. The people waiting for the doors to open before getting on the ship was kind of stupid, because Vader came in and would have gotten there before they were fully aboard, folks. I'm sorry. That's just the timing that you get in this show. Vader, or when Kenobi doesn't push Vader or push the right button to Anakin's lightsaber, when Kenobi doesn't push the right button to Anakin's lightsaber. Another one, folks. Hold on here. I'm going to have to pull out the other book here. So sorry about the camera shake. Episode 2, Visual Dictionary of Anakin's lightsaber, because this would have been his lightsaber of this scene. Visual Dictionary of Episode 2, Anakin's lightsaber. Let's see here. And come on. Come on. There we are. Yeah. Right here, folks. Right freaking there. Do you see where it says activator? Like right here? That's the activator. Not this, or not that area. That area. Why did everybody in Disney get that wrong? The Disney trilogy got it wrong wickedly. You'd think that Hayden and Ewan would have known that the activating stud was lower on Anakin's lightsaber. So let me just lift up the screen. Again, sorry for the shake. Yeah, folks. These are small problems. They don't know their own mechanics. Disney took over Star Wars. They should have gotten familiar with the mechanics. But they didn't. They added another button to Anakin's lightsaber and said, this is the activation button, not the actual one. That also measured the level of the battery or of the power supply life, the diadium power cell. The fight between Vader and Riva is enjoyable to watch, sure, folks. It's a visual spectacle, but it also overpowers, or it makes Vader look overpowered. It completely destroys the original trilogy Vader. You see Vader literally grab a ship, pull it down, rip it apart. I love watching that small little blooper video where somebody inserted Dave Chappelle saying, "Gotcha, bitch," and then the other one taking off. That was hilarious, by the way. And yet, folks, you never see that measure of power in the original trilogy. You see him choke out a guy that's on a different ship. You see him do all sorts of other stuff that's not really that big. So, him stopping a lightsaber, turning it with the twist of his hand. Only one person was ever meant or was only strong enough to do that back in the EU. Only one. Only one. And his name was Darth Vitiate. Valkorian. He was so strong that he could literally stop or use the Force to create a barrier in front of his hand about this far from his hand where a lightsaber would not touch him. The ones of Mortis, the father, the daughter, the son, they could also stop a lightsaber. How they grabbed the lightsaber, forced it back into the emitter, how they blocked it with their arms and whatnot. They could do that. They're gods of the Force, essentially. They're the living embodiments of the Force, so of course they could stop a lightsaber. Yet Anakin, or Vader, can do it only because Rey and Kylo Ren did it later in the Disney trilogy. I don't know why I just tried doing a French voice. But anyway. The second time that she gets stabbed in the stomach. How is she still alive? How does she survive? Again, folks, lightsabers lost their lethality in the show. They did. They lost their lethality in the show. The reveal of the Grand Inquisitor is not much of a shock when people realize that this show takes place before Rebels, and Rebels came out before this show. So it's not much of a reveal. Now, yeah, a lot of people called out that he was dead because, well, he kind of was dead in the second episode. He was unmoving, unbreathing. And yet they didn't establish that he was ever picked up. In fact, it was suggested that he was dead. And yeah, him coming back to life. Yeah. Vengeance is a good motivator to stay alive or whatever. It just doesn't flow well, folks. Also, Vader doesn't leave people to suffer. When he kills you, he kills you. He doesn't stab you through the chest or he doesn't stab you through your stomach, cleaving your spine in two, and scorching your organs on the inside, cauterizing them and whatnot, causing all sorts of damage because you're in motion. If you look at the stab from episode 1 where Qui-Gon Jin is stabbed, you literally see as he is falling downward that Maul's blade is still in him, and that's moving, killing him. You can literally see when other people are stabbed in the show and whatnot. When Palpatine stabs into Agen Kolar in episode 3, he stabs into him, and Agen is turning like this, cleaving himself in two, essentially, as he is reacting to the blade being stuck into him. Lightsabers lost their lethality in this show, folks. It just doesn't work. And even when you go in and then out, your blade is not going to be stationary when you are pulling your blade out of somebody. If you are a lightsaber, or if you have a lightsaber and you stab somebody, and like this, and as you are pulling out, it's either going up higher or it's going lower. You never go in perfectly and out perfectly. That doesn't work. You are causing more damage as you pull out because you are creating more burn and scarring and damage to organs and whatnot. She would have died. She wouldn't have even lived long enough to be taunted. It doesn't make sense. Now, the hyperdrive is down, and the Empire's right behind them. How did they expect Leia to get to Alderaan? Well, they show in the next episode that they're right on their tail. Yet, in the end of that episode, if they said that they were right on their tail, but they weren't being shot at. Oy. Tusken Bob and Raging Rhino. The overpowered Vader destroys the OT. This also makes episode 3 of Kenobi make no sense. Why does he not reach out and grab the droid or Kenobi on the other side of that fire? Starkiller survived, but Vader purposefully missed any vital organs. That's EU, buddy. If Riva was a good character who was trying to get to Vader to kill him for his atrocities and nearly killing her, then why torture a 10-year-old? Why torture the Jedi that you were once a part of? Why go along with helping him with his atrocities? If you were so guilt-ridden of if you hated him that much, you wouldn't go along with what he was doing, even if you wanted vengeance. Your emotions would have betrayed you, and he would have known that you were not worth keeping. He would have killed you. How did Riva get to Tatooine? We're on 68 here, folks. How did Riva get to Tatooine? And how is she not dead? Doesn't seem she got her wound treated because she's moving so slowly and gingerly. She's not, or she's favoring her wound and whatnot. How did she even stay alive long enough or even get to Tatooine? What ship did she use? Mosquito, sorry. None of this is explained. She gets stabbed. She's barely alive. She sees that message. And stupid mosquito. And yet, there's no explanation as to how she survived. There's no explanation as to how she even got to Tatooine. Now, mind you, they're chasing them in the beginning of this episode. And also, Riva is suddenly on Tatooine. This was shortly after Jabim. Like 5 to 10 minutes after Jabim. Yet, Riva somehow is on Tatooine. How did she get there so fast, folks? Did she force teleport? That's not even a real power. Come on now. That is also terrible writing. And how did she even live long enough? Did she put a back patch on? We don't know. If the Path Rebels had the imps on their tail this long from the last episode, how did they even survive that long? You know, a Star Destroyer wouldn't even have to waste time with trying to shoot at them. Send out a fighter wing of TIE fighters. Blast the ship to smithereens to kill Kenobi. It's that simple. And instead of letting them go, send the TIEs after them, then go after Kenobi. Seriously, folks. It really is that simple. Why aren't they ever thinking about this stuff? Why is Owen being such a ballless coward? It has to be Beru. And yes, I am calling this out. Beru is the one, gotta be the woman, and nowadays, because the Force is female, willing to stand and fight and make the man a coward. This is bullshit writing. And she is also the tactical genius, it seems. Knowing that Riva will come when the suns go down, and Owen is just looking there like, huh? I mean, literally, if you turn on the captions, he's like, UH is on the freaking screen. Folks, that's just bad writing. Also, when she asks the guy, she's looking for a farmer named Owen. This guy literally goes to Owen. She could have just followed him. A Force sensitive is looking for Owen and his family on Tatooine. Years later, that still would have been the talk of the town. Barely anything happens on Tatooine, so yeah. Owen and his family would have kind of had a name for themselves when an Inquisitor is looking for them. It doesn't make sense. Somehow, Tala's holster survives from her getting atomized. Yep. Because of Obi-Wan gives Leia the holster that Tala had. It was right on Tala when she blew herself up, and it was unscathed. These are logic problems, folks. These aren't making sense. Star Wars has become a turn your brain off to enjoy thing, which it never was meant to be. This is what pisses off a lot of the fans. The shaky camera work with Vader telling them to prepare his ship. I mean, that is a thing that was really bad in all of the shows. They had such bad cinematography in this show. Shaky cams. Like, you're seeing like this when he's saying, prepare my ship. Prepare my ship. I will face him myself. It's literally shaking like that, like I just did to this camera. When you're seeing him, or during the rematch of the century, this is what is taking my mind off of the rematch of the century, with this camera shaking like this. Folks, cinematography is essential when it comes to scenes where you are seeing fights, where you are seeing that you need to be able to see things clearly. You can't have the camera shaking like this. It's bad. It's really objectively bad quality. The rematch, again, it shouldn't happen as a breaks canon. I mean, as visually and spectacularly as a great whatever fight it is, it doesn't work. Lightsabers are weak again because Obi-Wan slashes Vader across the back, which should have freaking sliced through him instead of going like this across his back. Nope. Bang. No, it would have went in and down, carving into the back of Vader, killing him. It is important for all scenes you can think of. Yes, it is. It's common sense. In short, it is extremely bad writing. Yes, it is. It is extreme. This show is just a complete, it's bad writing all the way through. Why didn't Bale show up to Tatooine to help Owen when he left a message saying he would do so in the last episode? Mark with a C, thank you very much for pointing that out. I mean, he said, I will go and help the boy if I haven't heard from you. Well, you hadn't heard from him. Why didn't you go help him? Why didn't you go help Owen when Riva was coming? Little shout out to Mark with a C because that's how he did the Riva thing. He did it much better, though. The weapons that Owen and Beru use are short-barreled rifles, blasters, folks. I believe I actually have a small little... This was wooden guns from when I was a kid. This is essentially the size of the blaster that Owen and Beru are using, with a scope up here so that you could do long range, except that the barrel is literally this short. Yeah. Pew, pew, pew. Just one problem. When you are a moisture farmer protecting your farm against things like Tusken Raiders, and you want to pick them off from a distance so that they don't get too close, you want a long-barreled rifle blaster. You do not want a short-barreled rifle blaster because it's not as accurate. You are not going to hit a Tusken from 40 meters away with a blaster with a short barrel like that. Not with any much accuracy, folks. I'm just saying, know your technology. It is an important facet of Star Wars. The camera shakes too much, making it less watchable. Yeah, I already covered that. Vader wouldn't leave Kenobi's death to chance by burying him alive. Just saying, folks. He buries him. You have failed, Master. Why are you still calling him Master? Especially with the dialogue that is later. Could have been a mock, sure. But then he gets out. Obi-Wan is blasts out. And his inspiration to blast out, his reasoning, is mostly, literally 8 out of 10 cuts, Leia. Not Luke. Leia. Luke is the boy he was charged with fighting, or charged with watching, looking after, and yet Leia, because of all the show in this, is his inspiration of breaking out with the Force to go back after Vader. Wow. Now, also, folks, I recently saw this was yesterday that I saw this, where there was a cut of the Vader fight between Vader and Kenobi, yet it was intercut with Battles of the Heroes from Episode 3. And they had Episode 3 score added to this fight. Now, I can acknowledge that the fight was broke canon, and that it was just, the show was terrible. But this fight with that score improved that fight drastically. Now add a Steadicam, and you would have had a very good quality battle. But they didn't. They used this new score that literally, I can't even remember any of Obi-Wan Kenobi series score at all. I can't remember any of it. So, yeah. If you would have put in some very familiar pieces from John Williams' scores, it would have vastly improved the quality of the show. Well, maybe not vastly, but it would have improved it slightly, because the score is important. Kenobi's inability, or Vader's inability, to sense Kenobi under the rocks when he is the same distance from him that he was in A New Hope when the Falcon arrived on the Death Star. Ryan Kennel, Raging Rhino, and Tusken Bob get a shout out for this because they brought this up. Literally, how did Vader not sense him under the rocks? That he was still alive. He wouldn't leave Kenobi's death to chance like that. He wouldn't. Folks, that's just not Vader. It's contradictory to Vader's earlier behaviors from the comics, where he was slaughtering everybody. Owen knows where Riva is injured. How? Also, how is Riva still able to keep up the momentum with an open lightsaber wound? I mean, you literally see Owen reach for her injury and grab it, and she screams back. How did he know she was injured right in that spot? Sure, it was covered up by a sash, but how did he know that that was an injury? There was no blood. That's that's a semi-cauterized wound. Ugh. The slice of Vader's helmet would have indeed cut his face. When you are cutting into that helmet, you're telling me that would have killed Vader. That would have killed Vader. Lightsabers don't work in this show. Let's see here. Trying to do repair dialogue from Vader, where Vader says he killed Anakin Skywalker, lending weight to Kenobi telling Luke later on that Vader betrayed and murdered Anakin. That is all that is all that is. It is him. It is Obi-Wan receiving the rationalization that he didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. Vader did. That's all that was. And then when Kenobi leaves, goodbye, Darth. Why did he leave him alive? I hear that they gave some weird bullshit reason, compassion or something. No! Destroy the Sith, we must. Kenobi would have done it out of the memory of Anakin, especially considering Vader just admitted that he killed Anakin Skywalker. There's nothing of Anakin left. Kenobi should have killed him, and would have. Now, as Kenobi leaves, where's the Star Destroyer? Vader is smart enough to give orders. If my ship is not the one coming off of that planet, fire on whatever doesn't. Vader would have given that order. Yet, Kenobi takes or is able to escape and jump into hyperspace, sensing Luke's in trouble because he's being pursued by Riva. Now, Raging Rhino and Tusken Bob make a good point here. Hyperspace takes hours to traverse in that galaxy. As it did in A New Hope, took him a few hours to get to Alderaan from Tatooine. Jabim to Tatooine takes 5 minutes, apparently. And this other planet to Tatooine also seems to take just a couple minutes. I mean, wow. They have no concept of telling time in the show. It really does make a person wonder. Who's paying attention to this stuff? And they say that they got to go to the lore master, who was Pablo Hidalgo, who has made fun of so many fans and insulted so many fans because they actually have the love for Star Wars enough to say that this doesn't make sense. Instead, they're called toxic for being passionate. Darsan would have a form of dark healing that helped him recover insanely fatal injuries. It was his hatred that kept him alive. Darth Sion was one of the Malachor three, or was one of the Sith Triumvirate. Sean Cantrell, good to see you, by the way. And he was kept alive strictly because of his hatred. That's literally the explanation for him being alive. His hatred kept him intact, his body intact and alive. He is dead, but he is alive. He is like the Schrodinger's cat of Star Wars. Riva bringing Luke back after in a way they're trying to make it as Luke's dead. This is definitely meant for later generations because obviously anybody with half a brain who knows about Star Wars would know that Luke is alive. Seriously. Ugh. So trying to create that suspense is unnecessary. Riva's redemption makes no sense. This woman was about to torture a 10-year-old girl, folks. This is the 86th part or problem with the show. Or no, 85th. Her having a change of heart in so short of time makes no sense. You need to spread this out to like 10 or 11 or 12 episodes to give her that kind of redemption arc. Otherwise, it is very poor writing. You're trying to condense the story too much. It doesn't work. People would see that this girl or that this woman, not like a day ago at least, or 2 days ago, was ready to torture and kill a 10-year-old girl. yet suddenly she has a change of heart from all of it? It doesn't make sense. Now, folks, I do not blame Moses Ingram at all. At all. Moses Ingram is a great actress, especially in that moment when she is crying. That is the most genuine acting I've ever seen. She is actually able to bring the tears very well, unlike some other actresses or actress that we all know can't fake a tear for shit. I have nothing against Moses Ingram. I wish she would have known the about Star Wars before she was given the job. I wish she would have done some research. But other than that, Moses Ingram is more of a victim of Lucasfilm than she is of toxic Star Wars fans. And it seems like I'm having some audio issues. I'm going to wait for that to disappear. Yeah, 91. So am I coming in clearly, anybody? Can somebody in the chat tell me whether or not I'm coming in clearly? It's been almost 2 hours streaming, so yeah. See if that helps. Fine on this or fine on that end? Okay, thank you. So, then, yeah. 86, Mustafar. Vader talking with the Emperor. His rage from his defeat. We will burn down everything until we find him. We're roboting there for a minute. Yeah, okay. So I was roboting around the Riva thing. So yeah, Riva was about to torture and kill a 10-year-old girl the day before in the timeline of the show. And yet she won't, or yet she breaks down. Again, Moses Ingram is a victim of Lucasfilm in this case. She is not, or Moses Ingram is serious victim of Lucasfilm. I have nothing against Moses Ingram. I have nothing against her character Riva. Her character Riva is just poorly written. That is the writer's fault. Also, the director's fault. Moses Ingram, I hear, is a great actress, but she is more of a victim of Lucasfilm than she is of toxic Star Wars fans. So I wanted to clear that up because it seemed like I was roboting for a minute while trying to explain that. And again, Moses Ingram doesn't deserve any actual hate because of her character. That is Lucasfilm's fault. Their fault for making her character this bad. They needed to expand her character for another 6 to 8 episodes. Apparently, she's getting her own show, even though she was the main star of this show, because that's what it seemed like. And it looks like it might be roboting again. Sorry about that, if I am. So, yeah. Her fate is left uncertain so that she can have her own show after she got stabbed in the stomach and somehow doesn't die. Even as a kid, she gets stabbed in the same area and doesn't die. It just doesn't make sense. She should have died. But that's just bad writing on Lucasfilm's part. Now, the return to Alderaan. Kenobi returning there and telling Leia a little bit about her parents is a contradiction to the lore. Not to mention, he said he did know her parents. I wish I could say that I was your father, Leia, but I'm not. He never said that he didn't know who her parents were. He didn't say that at all in this show. Yet he then tells her that she's like her mother in this way and she's like her father in that way. That's just poor writing and contradictory because they didn't keep up. 88. Kenobi moving from the cave, visiting Owen and meeting Luke, telling Owen that all the protection Luke needs is him and Beru. What? A lightsaber-wielding maniac woman just infiltrated the homestead last night. And you think that they're able to handle it? They literally lost Luke against this woman. Wow. That's just bad, folks. That's just horrible writing. Makes no sense. Qui-Gon Jin, 89. Qui-Gon Jinn is a Force ghost. This is a blatant screw-up. He admitted to Yoda in the Clone Wars, which is still considered canon to Disney, that he never learned to manifest his body. He could only communicate verbally through the Force. You must complete what I could not. When Yoda asks him if he can show himself, I cannot. My training was incomplete. People talk. Or number 91. Or 90, rather. People talk. If a Force-sensitive Inquisitor person is harassing people and looking for a moisture farmer, 9 years later, that still would have been talk of a town. It's like, people are... This just would have bled into episode 4 somehow. The talk of the town, how people were looking for, how Inquisitors were looking for Owen and Beru Lars, because apparently they only hunt Jedi. Were they harboring a Jedi? Who knows? This would have also brought the Empire a little bit more to Tatooine. 91. Leia doesn't react to Kenobi's death on the Death Star. While you can argue that she is an objective leader, there was a brief moment she could have and yet did not. This is another reason why her interactions with Kenobi in this series makes no sense. Folks, again, I have nothing against the actress who plays child Leia. She was a good actress for a 10-year-old girl. Yet, the scenes with Obi-Wan and his interacting with Leia makes no sense when it comes to the grand scheme of things. Now, everybody can argue that she's like, Ben Kenobi, where is he? She's responding not to the name Ben Kenobi. She was looking for General Obi-Wan Kenobi. And yet, when she heard the name Kenobi, that is what she was responding to. If she would have seen Obi-Wan get struck down by Vader, instead of saying, come on, Luke, it's too late, she would have been just as pissed off as Luke. She would have been trying to blast as many stormtroopers and Vader. And yet, she's the voice of reason to get out of there. There's nothing else she could have done. She would have been not just comforting Luke, but she would have also needed comforting herself because she was friends with Obi-Wan. Her involvement in this show makes no sense when it comes to the addition of episode 4, A New Hope. The reason why the Kenobi show doesn't make sense, how it has this 91 problems, is because the people who were in charge didn't pay attention when they should have. They tried cherry picking parts of the movies, parts of the different parts of the original trilogy, throwing them in there to justify certain things here and there, and by doing so, ended up making it worse. Because you are not only trying to satisfy this line or this line, you're screwing up the rest of it as you go along by trying to, because you're not paying attention. You don't understand when he says, when I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master. That's not reconciled in this. When he says, when I left you, I was but the learner, he is not just talking about Obi-Wan. He's talking, when I left you and the order of Jedi, I was but a learner. I was but a Sith learner on Mustafar when I broke from you all. Now I am the master. True, he is still an apprentice, but he would consider himself in arrogance as a master. That is what that means. They don't reconcile that in this show. Everybody's saying that they could have easily fought in between episodes 4 and 5. No. It is even suggested on their own website that they fought decades earlier and then back on the Death Star. That's it. Decades being 19 years, which is almost 2 decades. So yeah. Folks, those are all the problems with Kenobi. Thank you again to Matthew Kadish, Tuscan Bob, Open Airlock Policy, Ryan Kennel, Raging Rhino, OG Star Wars, and everyone else in the chat. Jedi Padawan Trailer, David Kotler, Sean Control. Who else? The Allen Bros 04, Eastland Burkholder, The Sentinel. Who else? OG Star Wars, CJH, Jedi Padawan Trailer. I think I already said your name twice. George Lucas, apparently. Junebug Studio. GB Lukey, thank you for coming in. I mean, thank you so much to everybody coming in and supporting the stream. This stream needed to happen because the show's involvement and its serious violations of lore of their own continuity. Folks, this is their own continuity that they were violating. It doesn't make sense. Anyway, folks, thank you so much for tuning in. My mystery review tomorrow has been pushed back to Wednesday morning. I have work that I need to do tomorrow morning. So, yes, I will be doing that instead. So, stay tuned for Wednesday morning when the stream goes up. Anyway, folks, thank you so much again for tuning in. You all know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, share, all that jazz. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. What did you think about all the points that I have raised? Do you have any counters? Did you have anything else to add? Let me know all of it, folks. This has been Orange Hat Reviews. Stay humble.